Bill. My mom is a nurse from the Philippines. My dad's a small business owner. And the reason, you know what, I had kind of a speech prepared, but I was so moved by that video, I'm kind of just going to talk off the cuff a little bit. So, my grandmother on my dad's side was the first woman to serve as Justice of the Peace in Pike County, my Granny Jean. And she fought for civil rights in the 50s and 60s. She actually officiated weddings in her home for African Americans during segregation. And I found out later she got death threats for doing that. But that was such an inspiration for me to be involved in public service because it showed me that we can all come together and we can fight for the rights of people, even if they don't look like us.
Right.
Even if they don't look like us, because as was said earlier, we're all humans, we're all God's creation, we all bleed red, and we're all in this together. And my mom is from the Philippines, and she went through some stuff that's not dissimilar to what we saw on this movie just now. In 1972, President Marcos, I don't know if y'all remember him, his wife had all those shoes, Imelda, in the Philippines. He declared martial law. He was president, he wanted to stay president, he liked it, so he stayed as president for 21 years. And the people started to rebel, so he declared martial law. My mom said that she was living in Manila at the time, she was finishing up nursing school. She said she did not see a newspaper for 3 years. There were only 2 TV stations that were government controlled, and there were tanks and soldiers going up and down the streets enforcing a 9 o'clock curfew. 2 of her first cousins protested against what was going on. They were thrown in jail, and it was just a really scary time. You could actually be shot in the streets past 9 o'clock p.m. just for being out there because they figured you were up to no good. No trial, nothing, just shoot you. So when she saw that flyer in her hospital said, "We're looking for nurses in Murfreesboro, Arkansas," she said, "I don't know where that is, but that's America. And we have the freedom of speech in America and the freedom to vote. And that's more than what we have here. And I want my future children to have those freedoms." The reason that comes back to me is because when I served, so I was an election commissioner in Pulaski County. When I served as election commissioner in Pulaski County for the 2020 election, I saw some things that were just terrible and not right. My 2 Republican colleagues threw out 1,500 ballots, 1,500 absentee ballots for things like a missing apartment number, a missing zip code, not a wrong zip code, just a missing zip code, because they signed J. Price instead of Josh Price, because they put today's date instead of the birth date, not thinking. So unfortunately in Arkansas, we don't have a way to correct those ballots. We don't have what's called a cure period. So if you don't get it right the first time, that's it. It's thrown out. Instead of giving that voter any kind of compassion, any type of kindness, siding with the voter, they did the opposite. Those votes were guilty until proven innocent instead of the other way around. And that really bothered me because the way I saw it, every vote that passed through my hands, that's sacred. That's somebody's hopes and dreams for the future. I was on a call and a pastor said to me, he said, a vote is a prayer. That's your prayer for a better world, a better community for your kids and your grandkids. And they were just throwing out these votes left and right. If you didn't cross your T or dot your I, your vote was going to get thrown out. And it was so wrong to me. And the one instance that really was the straw that broke the camel's back for me, we had an 85-year-old woman who had had a severe stroke. And she had a letter from her husband explaining her medical condition. She had a letter from her doctor explaining her medical condition and that her signature would be a little shaky. Both letters were notarized during the pandemic. They threw out her ballot anyway. So I moved to keep it. They said no. They said, well, you know what? We're not doctors. We can't make that determination. I said, well, doctor already did. You already got a doctor's note. They didn't care. They threw it out. After that, and then we had the report come out, the election report for the state of Arkansas. Arkansas is number 1 in rejection of absentee ballots. 6.4%. The next state is Oklahoma, 5.8%. Most other states in the country is 1% or less. In Arkansas, 6.4%. We are dead last in voter registration, 63%. Dead last in voter turnout, 54%. 1.2 million Arkansans voted in the last election, 1.1 million did not vote. So we have a problem here in Arkansas where people are not getting to the polls and not making their voices heard. And a lot of it is voter apathy, yes, but a lot of it is voter suppression. It's voter suppression. That's why I say we are in Jim Crow 2.0 right now. We are. I was in Yale County, Dardanelle, and they told me they had 25 polling locations and they've been consolidated to 11. And some people who live on the outskirts of the county, they have to drive 35 miles to go vote. So tell me that's not voter suppression. What if you don't have a car? What if you're elderly? What if you're not mobile? What if you have medical condition? What if you don't have childcare? What if you can't get off work? Then you can't vote. You know, they say every American has the right to vote, but we have the right to vote conveniently. You shouldn't have to travel 30 miles to vote. You shouldn't have to pass a literacy test. You shouldn't have to make sure you sign your signature a certain way. That's not what's in the Constitution. If you are an American citizen, 18 and up, you have the right to vote. Period. Period. No ands, ifs, ors, or buts. I'm going to tell you a little story. Again, I told you my mom was from the Philippines. So we had a special election in 2019. I can't remember what it was for, something minor. But we went up there to vote. My mom and I come in. We walk into the same polling location, go to 2 different lines. So I walk up to the poll worker. I pull up my ID, and they say, "Sir, I don't need to see your ID. I know who you are. You're one of our commissioners." I said, "Okay, but you still need to see my ID. That's the law, right? You got to see my photo ID. Y'all strict about this usually. So here's my photo ID." So I said, "Okay." And I look over to my mom in the other line. She's having problems getting through the line. And I walk over and said, "What's going on?" And she said, "Well, I showed my driver's license. They said I need to show them a passport to prove that I'm an American citizen." I said, "You don't have to do that." I said, "You've already shown your photo ID." I said, No, you don't have to do that." So I had to intervene, and then finally they let her through. But what if I wasn't there? She would have left. She would have went home, tried to find her passport, or you know what? She would have got defeated and been disenfranchised and said, "You know what? Never mind. I'm not going to vote." But notice how they did it to a woman who's an immigrant and a person of color. Another problem, my mom's name's Teresita. Teresita. Not a common name here in the U.S. She goes by Tess. Tess is her nickname. All right? So if I sign something, Josh versus Joshua, we know Josh is Joshua. Matt versus Matthew, we know that. Tess versus Teresita, people here don't know that. So she signed her name Tess on there. They were going to reject her ballot. I said, "You have to sign your full name, your government name." That's another problem, because when you have folks of color, you've got immigrants, they may have a nickname they go by that's not their government name, and it's not intuitive. It's simple, like Josh is Joshua, and their votes are getting thrown out too. Heck, even on my dad's side, my aunt, her name's Iris, so we call her Missy. So, you know, Missy, that's not going to fly, because her real name is Iris. So when they pass these voter suppression bills, I was on a call the other day, they said they think it's a targeted missile, but it's really a nuclear bomb. It's just hitting everybody. It's hitting everybody. Democrats and Republicans alike. And I don't care if you're a Democrat, I don't care if you're a Republican, Green Party, Libertarian Party, Independent. We all have the right to vote. Voting is not a partisan issue. It is a sacred American right. It's a sacred American right. And I'm going to leave y'all with a story. Because I was really touched and moved by that video. And my mom is now 70 years old. She has mild dementia. And after the election in 2020, of course, we had the insurrection at the Capitol. She was watching that. And then we had all that slew of terrible voter suppression bills that the legislature was trying to pass. You can't bring water. You can't give people snacks. Your signature has to match your signature when you turned 18 and first filled out your voter registration form. And I was at the Capitol testifying against those bills. We got some of them killed, and some of them passed through. And I'm part of a lawsuit now to get those thrown out for being unconstitutional. But my mom was watching the news, and she saw me on TV a couple times, and she saw what I was doing. And she said to me, she had a moment of lucidity, and she said, "Josh, I saw this same thing happen in the Philippines, and I never thought I'd see it happen here in the United States." And that really touched me. 25 years old, came here by herself, all the sacrifices she made so that my sister and I could have the freedom to vote, the freedom of speech. and here it's being taken away again. So I made her a promise that day. I said, Mom, I'm going to fight to make sure that doesn't happen here. Not just for you, but for all the people of Arkansas. And as Secretary of State, I plan to keep that promise. Thank you so much. God bless you.